Okay, this is a demo of how to connect a JackTrip virtual studio device to a JackTrip server from Musicians Together Apart. So Musicians Together Apart offers JackTrip servers that were originally developed for individuals running JackTrip from the software that is downloadable to Macintosh, PC, and Linux. And so you'll see somewhat different looks on the Musicians Together Apart JackTrip server dashboard, but it's very similar to what the JackTrip Virtual Studio device dashboard offers, just a little bit of different terminologies. So, right now, if an individual purchases a JackTrip server or private virtual room from Musicians Together Apart, test server, or a monthly subscription server, the dashboard will be available at either a host name, full URL, or by IP address. In this case, we're using a test server that is reachable just by IP address for the sake of this video. The virtual studio, we're using a virtual studio SD card image, so it's not the virtual studio device that has the connectors built in. It's instead using a USB audio device connected to it, which is the Ugreen USB dongle audio interface that's listed as one of the compatible interfaces. So if you log into your virtual studio dashboard, you'll see that there's a lot of test servers and other servers out here. And these are public servers. And what we need to do is create a new server that Virtual Studio can see. And that new server will actually be the one that is already either purchased or subscribed to from Musicians Together Apart. So the way we do this is we use the create server function in the Virtual Studio dashboard. Even though the server's already been created under Musicians Together Apart, we're going to use the create server function. So if we turn off show public, we'll see that there aren't any servers specific to the account that I am logged in with on the Virtual Studio dashboard. So we're going to create a server, and we're going to say that it's not a managed server. So a managed server is one that operates within the Virtual Studio ecosystem. And the unmanaged server is what is the type that you could say is related to Musicians Together Apart servers. So that means they're not managed by Virtual Studio, but they're actually managed by Musicians Together Apart. So in this case, we'll say musician, we'll give it a name. And this will be a New York City server. And in this case, you can use a host name, and that would be something like fred123.jacktripservers.net, or you can use the IP address. You get both of those at the time of ordering a server from Musicians Together Apart. In this case, we're using an IP address. And in this case, it is a JackTrip server only. And when you select the unmanaged server, the region and size will be grayed out. And the option for public should be kept off because the private servers most people do not want to make those public. All right. And then the server port will always be the same, 4464. The rate would be the 48 kilohertz. That's DVD quality, or here it's called CD plus. And the samples can be whatever you choose. We recommend 32 or 64. Different audio interfaces work at different rates. So musicians usually want the lowest rate possible. So we recommend 32 if it works, but right now we're using the Ugreen USB audio interface dongle, and that does not go to 32. The lowest it can do is 64. And so that is considered the samples in the Musicians Together Apart server dashboard. It has a different name, and the Q also has a different name, but we'll leave the Q set to auto, and we're going to have the sample set to 64 here. So we'll hit create server, and again, this is not creating the server. This is making the server an available item to connect to within the Virtual Studio login or dashboard. Okay, and if we look at the further settings by clicking the down arrow, we'll see the same things. And you'll notice that audio mixing and branch and pan slots, those are not things that are available with Musicians Together Apart servers. The Musicians Together Apart servers are designed to be kept as simple as possible with minimum features and functions, so that the advanced features here that various musicians might want, if you needed those, you'd go for a managed server from Virtual Studio at jacktrip.org. Okay, so let's connect to, well, let's first mention that the samples here, 64 and Q Auto, if we look at the dashboard for the JackTrip server from Musicians Together Apart, the buffer size is what is called samples. So samples 64 corresponds to buffer size 64, or also called 64 frames per period. And the packet buffer size, also called jitter buffer and also called ring buffer, that is labeled as Q in Virtual Studio. And the Q is auto. That can actually be anything you want. And the server can be any of these. It doesn't have to match the Virtual Studio device setting. What does have to match is the buffer size, 64, 128, 32. That has to match the samples given here in the Virtual Studio dashboard. So we're just making sure that the 64 is selected. And right now, the server mode is without loopback. So if you connect to it, you would only hear your other musicians that are connected to the server. But if you want to hear yourself plus the other musicians, you would say all clients with loopback. So we're selecting that. And we're going to say update server settings. And we're going to return to the dashboard, and now this is highlighted. Okay, so we have this server that has been created. I'm going to turn off show public again, and we'll see that this is the only server in our account. And we're going to go here to audio devices, and we're going to now select the server. And this server shows up at the bottom. And we don't need to use the input-output volume. So we're going to connect. And now that the top item is red, we're connected. And a loopback should be audible. It's not part of this demo, but there will be a loopback audible. And some people may notice that the delay here on the very bottom right being highlighted, that's a very huge delay, and that's just because this server is 3,000 miles away. This is a New York server being connected to from a California location. Ordinarily, individuals would have a much lower delay to the server in order to have latency within the appropriate minimum. So that is the method for using the JackTrip Virtual Studio device with the JackTrip servers from Musicians Together Apart. Thank you.